Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for the support for my first video. And today we are going to take another sketch that I have done. Please focus. There we go. This might be a bit hard to see, but it is of a YouTuber that's been a huge inspiration to me. Her name is Bokkei. She does amazing work with pastels and color pencils. I'm going to go halfway there and use some color pencils. And I'll also be using watercolors. So first up, I thought I'd show you some of the materials for this art adventure. This is my Pentalic Aqua Journal, great paper for watercolor. It's a small little sketchbook, 5 by 3 inches. This is my Sakura Koi watercolors, ceramic palette, some water, and some tissues, and a cloth for drying off brushes if I need it. And of course a whole bunch of different brushes. These are a whole bunch of my small brushes because it's a small sketch. And then of course some color pencils. I'm trying out my Van Gogh color pencils that I picked up in Japan, and they're artist quality and light fast, very creamy. So first of all, I'm going to put down a base layer of color onto the sketch, and I often just leave colors from a previous painting on a palette so that I can use them, but there wasn't really anything for skin tones this time, so I cleaned off the small area, and here I go laying down a quick background layer. And at the end of the sketch or drawing, you're not going to see any of this work actually. It's just helpful when you're doing color pencil work to have a quick few layers of something down to work on, and it also helps me to establish values where it's going to be lighter or darker, and how to work, especially since I'm pretty new, actually very new to using pencils and just figuring out how they work and build up on layers. I find it really helpful to start with something that I'm far more comfortable with, which is watercolor. Speaking of watercolor, I should tell you a little bit about this set if you're not familiar with it. It's a super popular little travel set. It even has a water brush included. You can see that at the top, but I'm not using it. They're not light fast though, they're not artist quality, and I'm just using them as a base layer before I move on to my color pencils, which are artist quality and are light fast. And you can see that I've started here with a range of colors. It can be surprising how many colors are in skin and how many colors you need to use to achieve a skin tone. So you can see quite a range of different yellows, pinks, purples, and reds that I'm choosing to use on Bokkei's skin. And then for her hair, oranges and browns. And for the background, I'm choosing a range of greens and blues. And then you can see there that I've just added some melts, which is a solvent. Any solvent will work, and they just help to spread out the pigment, and that's especially important for watercolor paper that's quite textured like this. Otherwise you're going to end up with an extremely sketchy look, which is cool if that's what you're going for, and I still end up with something a little sketchy, but I wanted things smoothed out a little bit. And then here you can see as I'm putting on the second layer, things begin to get a little bit more vibrant. So there's one layer of watercolor, one layer of pencil, now my second layer of color pencils. And that's the cool thing about color pencils. They really begin to build up on top of each other while showing some of the layers below and creating a real vibrancy and richness and depth, especially if you choose to use solvent. By the way, the solvent that I got is also from Japan. It's made by Holbein, which also make color pencils and a range of other different art supplies. I super love their watercolor paints. So now I'm moving on to another background layer, and this is where you can really start to see a depth and richness begin to develop over Bokkei. And I forgot to tell you a little bit about Bokkei. So she's really inspired me in a whole range of ways, including this sort of art technique. Her artwork is just flawlessly beautiful, and she starts with a layer of pan pastels, most of the time before she moves on to using color pencils on top of it. So that's inspired me to take my watercolors as a base layer and then use my color pencils on top of that. She's very methodical and careful and uses a range of interesting papers, and I don't think she tends to, in fact, she doesn't tend to use solvent with the technique that she uses, partly because the pastels create such a thicker base layer than the watercolors, I guess, but also due to her paper choice, which is very different from this paper, and just her technique that she uses. Okay, so now you can even see some greens and dark blues and indigos going into the skin and hair to create some deeper contrast. And again, that can be surprising to people to see such a range of colors being used, but it really helps to create something more lifelike. And if you study your own skin very closely, you'll be able to see a whole range of different color values as well. Okay, so I'm going to leave a link to Bokkei's channel down below, and hopefully she even gets a chance to see this. That would be fantastic. And I'll switch over to some music now so you can relax and enjoy the rest of the painting. So you just saw my first pencil break there.
all things considered, I think these pencils are holding up really well. I've shipped them from Japan to now the US and moved them around a whole bunch, and so all things considered, they're coping quite well. And I was probably being a little bit too quick and rough for that background there, and just snapped. And so I think this is my final layer of pencil work, and although it's not, a photorealistic or hyper-realistic by any means kind of sketch, for the size and for my inexperience with pencils, I'm really pleased with the result. And hopefully if Bokkei sees it, she'll appreciate it as well. And thank you so much for watching. If you could like, comment, and subscribe, I'd super appreciate it. And as a final touch, I've added some gold Posca paint as a final border. And thank you so much for joining me. I hope to see you again soon for another art adventure. Take care.